This is a vision the Lord gave me January 21st, 2020. I saw in a room that there was a nun. She was writing something down and she was looking out of a window. And as she's writing, she looks up and she sees something. And right beside her, a bride walks up and she points out into the sky. And what they see out into the sky is a bright light. And this bright light right in front of it is a figure. And the figure reminds me of some sort of it looks like a clown, not like a scary one, but just like a clown that's sort of a little ridiculous, to be honest. And he's balancing on this ball with like a plank of wood over it. So he's got this ball underneath the plank of wood and is sort of balancing on it. And he's like a fat guy, and he's got like a white outfit with these red buttons and like a funny little hat on. And you can tell that it represented a light as if it were coming from heaven, but instead it was a false picture in front of that light. So you could see behind that light coming down from heaven was Jesus on a horse. And you can see that he had a sword in his hand that had like blue lightning coming from it. And as he pointed the sword out forward, you could see that this sword was basically piercing between two realities or something like that. It was like darkness and where he was coming from light. So he was piercing through the darkness in a way to bring forth whatever he was bringing forth. And so you see him, he dismounts off of this horse and he walks forward and he comes up to this figure that was in front of him, sort of portraying very much a falseness that sort of came in his stead almost in front of him. And Jesus came and he took his sword and he took off the head of this falseness, this joke. It was a joke, basically. Anyway, and then after Jesus did that, you could see him walking, and he had this train, sort of like of his robe that was long, and you could see his crown, and it was beautiful and gold and shiny, and the crown lifted off of his head and sort of levitated in the air. And when I looked at it closely, I could see my reflection. It was a reflective crown. And it wasn't reflective of my face as if I was looking in a mirror, but it was reflective of a position that I would put myself in the will of God, as if I was doing something the Lord had asked me to do. It was a picture of me in that way. As I watched Jesus move forward a little bit, you could see that he was out in the atmosphere, basically hovering above the earth. And this next picture was just beautiful to me, but he had walked up and he was looking down upon the earth, and he had rolled out all this, these pages and maps and, blueprints. And you could just see that he was standing before, his charge of the earth. He was very much the architect. He was very much the one who puts things in place and makes things happen. And that was the stage sort of that I saw there, was all these things laid out in front of him, all kinds of pens and protractors and measuring devices and like I said, blueprints and things like that, all laid out before him. And I began to see him write something down, and I saw that he wrote it in Chinese, and he rolled it up and he handed it forward, and a messenger came and took it and brought it to the earth. The next thing that I saw him do, he started to draw. And he started to draw an object that I don't know what it is. But the best way I can describe it is to say that if you've ever seen like a small pumpkin, like a miniature one, how it has these like curved lines all the way around and they're all separate. He began to draw this circular shape, this 3D circular shape almost, that had these half crescents all the way around. That's why it reminded me of like the shape of a small pumpkin. Anyway, he then, he's just coloring it in. And then on the page, it begins to spin. And then after it begins to spin on the page, it comes up out of the page and becomes a real live thing. And as it comes up out of the page, it almost takes on the form of what would look like a caterpillar or something, sort of flying through the air down into earth. And as it went onto the earth, you could just see sort of it lay itself down all across the world. And almost in it reminded me of a staple, like if a staple from a staple, like a stapler would staple itself into the ground. But it was pretty massive, probably the size of a car. Each staple was like the size of a car, and it just kind of laid itself across the earth, sort of like in a snake type, not a snake, but a snake type, caterpillar type, body all the way across the earth. And the Lord sort of began to show me that it was some sort of protected. It was very protected. You couldn't get in there without the permission of the Lord, but it was a protective sort of transportation system type thing. I'm not sure exactly, but right after this, he opened up a fan, like a handheld fan, one of those paper ones, and he opened the fan and then lowered it. And as it lowered, I was sort of placed right in the middle of this third world country setting. It was just green. It had sort of like a pond, but it reminded me of third world country. But in front of me was one of these staples, so I could see inside of it. And it was a dark tunnel. And it was also immediately brought to my mind another vision that I had seen this tunnel before in a different form. It was a vision that I had where there was a wave, and under the wave, the tunnel we were supposed to walk through. And when you got to the other side, in this vision that I saw previously, you were in the beautiful land, like I don't know what land that is, heaven, I don't know, the beautiful land the Bible talks about, the promised land, I don't know. But it's always like a garden type setting. Anyway, so it was presented to me that is where this leads. No matter where you enter it in the world, that's where it leads. But as I entered this dark tunnel, there were others there with me, and I'm not even sure if it was me, just me seeing it. Right in front of us was this really dark figure, like a dark angel. It was like, red eyes, dark, shadowy creature. And a couple of other characters, actually from my childhood, false superhero type situations, male and female. But this creature in the middle, this man in all black, or this dark figure in all black, began to breathe out of his mouth all over the place, just from the left all the way around to the right. And out of his breath came a smoke, and it was a smoke screen, so that the smoke screen would be in front of the people walking down this tunnel. And it was meant to obviously keep them from that. It was meant to be a lie, to, a veil of sorts, to keep the people from moving forward. But as he did this, and he was big and scary and large and, blowing the smoke screen, it shattered immediately. It held no weight. It was like the weakest window in the world that just broke and shattered to pieces, thin as can be. And even as the people walked past the broken pieces, they were just lying there on the ground, meaning nothing, able to do nothing, broken and forever gone. And as you can see from the ground's point of view, this is the point of view that I had. I saw the people walking forward, and I could see the ground pieces, and I could see ahead of them. And they were able to come into this place, into this promised land or beautiful land or whatever it's called. And that is where this vision ends. This is a part of the vision that I forgot from January 21st, 2020. As the crown is extended in the air, the crown begins to spotlight certain parts of the earth, like a searchlight. As it's extended up there in the air, it just sort of shines down and spotlights certain places of the world.